The mayor really deserves to be commended, and I've gotten to know him and I like him. You'll hear from him later today, I think. But he is an elected official. It's sort of your job. This is not Sandy's job. Some would argue that, and Sandy sort of suggested it, some people are saying, why is the chamber in this space? Let me make it clear. As clear as I can make it. After traveling to 100 countries and countless cities, 600,000 air miles last year alone, meeting leaders and those who say they're leaders, Sandy Barua is in the Detroit Chamber by extension, are literally the best group of organized leaders for business development I have met in the country. It is even more, yes, give yourself applause, you should, and you should recognize that eagles don't fly in packs. You've never seen a flock of eagles. And eagles will get shot at, they will get criticized. People may not understand them, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. I'd argue that what you're doing here is even more progressive than in my own home city. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And before Atlanta, I lived in Los Angeles. And my friends there won't like what I'm about to say, but what you're doing here is more progressive. What the chamber is doing here, what Sandy is doing here is truly thought-provoking and progressive. So you say, okay, well, John, this is a social issue. No, it's not. I tell my wealthy friends, my rich friends need my poor friends to do better if only to stay rich. 70% of the US economy is consumer spending. Let that sit in with you for a moment. 70% of the US economy, $17 trillion of GDP. The whole world economy is only $63 trillion. We're a quarter of the world economy. We're only a fraction of the world population, 350 million people versus 7 billion, give or take, in the world. And yet we are a quarter of the world economy, and 70% of that is consumer spending, and 70% of that 70% are living from paycheck to paycheck. And by the way, that's a Federal Reserve statistic. If the Federal Reserve is saying that 70% of Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck, you must hypothesize that it's got to be at least 80% plus. What does that mean? Does that mean so-called poor people? That means you got too much month at the end of your money. I'm sorry, that's none of you. You're all just uber rich. You're all doing extraordinarily well. But somebody in here has a cousin boo-boo. The sister here looked, she just put her head down. She said, oh, he did not go there. Cousin Bubba, cousin Boo-Boo. Do you know what I'm talking? Somebody's got a cousin here, a brother, a sister, a friend, who has got too much month at the end of their money, who's struggling from paycheck to paycheck, and it affects every part of their lives, yes or no? You see, that wasn't a black yes, it wasn't a Latino yes, it wasn't an Asian yes, it wasn't an Indian yes, it wasn't a Latino yes. Whether you're white, black, red, brown, or yellow, you want to see some more green. You guys are a hard audience. I'm giving you some good stuff. It's going right over your heads. Wake up, the coffee's in the back. I came all across the country, arrived at 2 in the morning to give you a free speech. You better. Do anything for Sandy, for Detroit, for the people of Detroit. Detroit is not an American city. Detroit is an idea. And America needs Detroit to succeed. I said this at Mackinac, I'm going to say it again. The wealthiest city in the world 60 plus years ago was Detroit, wealthier than Paris, wealthier than New York, wealthier than London, wealthier than Dubai. The wealthiest city in the world was Detroit, not in America, the world. Larger GDP than most countries. And somehow it flittered away. And America is not a country, she's an idea. She's an idea. It's the only nation in the world with every race of people within their borders. Think about that. Because you don't do business with people you don't reflect, respect, or understand. And you don't do business with companies or governments, you do business with people. My only spiritual comment today: we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Life's about relationships, it's about energy. So let me talk about energy, and so I sort of start to drill this down and talk about what I think is the game changer in Detroit to make you once again the trendsetter, the trend leader, and I think the transformational city model for the nation in the 21st century in America, and by extension the world. 1865, arguably the best president we ever had, President Abraham Lincoln, after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the Civil War, March 3rd, 1865, created the Freedmen's Bank. Nobody knows about it, lost to history. The bank's mission: teach freed slaves about money. I paused for effect because Lincoln underscored a subtle but unmistakable point: that you can't be free with physical freedom until you've got financial freedom. In fact, real freedom is really self-determination, and you cannot determine yourself in a free enterprise system without understanding the language of money. I was in Jordan, and leaders from Israel were there, which shows that everybody can get along. And Shimon Peres told me, John, you're going to be criticized somewhat for your messaging, and you tell them this: even if you want to distribute money like a socialist, you got to first collect money like a capitalist. I'm just going right over your head. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's taped. Lincoln was a visionary. We don't have time to get into the details, but the 3 months of January to March 1865 were probably the most strategically important months in all of American history from a public policy perspective. And it capped off with this Freedmen's Bank. Lincoln was killed 1 month later. Frederick Douglass went on to run the bank when Lincoln died. Now, Frederick Douglass is known as an abolitionist. He's really a businessman. Owned property in Baltimore, owned businesses in Baltimore and Anacostia, put $10,000 of his own money up to run the bank. When it failed, $10,000 in 1865 is $20 million today. In a bank the government owned, he knew he wasn't going to get the money back. You're not talking about a civil rights leader, you're talking about a civil rights leader. A businessman who took on the abolitionist model. When the bank failed, because it had been gamed by political operatives after Lincoln's death, Frederick Douglass and leaders said the failure of this bank did more to set free slaves in America back than 10 more years of slavery. You pop your fingers and you fast forward to a guy named Reverend Leon Sullivan. Before I get to him, let me go to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968, April 1968. And my hero, Ambassador Andrew Young, and Dr. King were in Memphis, Tennessee, pushing poverty because that was the next iteration after civil rights. And by the way, Dr. King wasn't about black people. We called him a black leader. No, but he said, I'm here to redeem the soul of America from the triple evils of war, racism, and poverty. He knew those things were keeping us from being who we could be, to allow us to express all of our God-given talents, to grow our GDP. And when he was in Memphis, Dr. King said this in April 68 about the Poor People's Campaign. He said, you cannot legislate goodness, you cannot pass a law to force someone to respect you. The only way to social justice in a capitalist country is economics and ownership. Dr. King was killed April 68, literally 100 years after Lincoln was killed the same month. Oddly enough, it's Financial Literacy Month, April of every year. Dr. King's lieutenant, Andrew Young, now Ambassador Andrew Young, my mentor, our global spokesman, after Reverend Leon Sullivan stands up, joins the board, I believe it was Ford, but it was one of the large automobile manufacturers, I believe it was Ford, the first black man to serve on the corporate board in the 1970s, Leon Sullivan. Andrew Young then shows up and he says this: to live in a system of free enterprise and not to understand the rules of free enterprise must be the very definition of slavery. Let's fast forward to today. I think that the reason for Ferguson, Missouri is simple. It's the same reason for Baltimore. It's the same, they riot. The same reason why South Central riots. Same reason why you've got friction here in parts of Detroit. Same reasons why you have friction in the south side of, by the way, it has nothing to do with race. Throw up the only slide I have. While the slide is coming up, let me say this. Ferguson, Missouri is the legacy of the Freedmen's Bank failing in 1865. Because 700 credit score communities don't riot. I'm dropping the mic all day here, and it's just falling flat. You with me? You've never had a middle-class riot in America's history. By the way, anytime you disagree with something I have to say, please just raise your hand and stop me. None of this is rocket science. It's all common sense. There has never been a middle-class riot of any race in all of America's history. There's never been the equivalent of a 700 credit score neighborhood riot because middle-class folks don't riot. They want to go shopping. They want to spend time with their families. Every time there's been a riot, it's been listen now, a 500 credit score neighborhood. Every time, white, rural, black and brown, urban, an Indian reservation outside of a military base, here's what you see. A check casher next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a title lender, next to a liquor store. And they're all feeding. It's a $1 trillion industry. Financial services in these neighborhoods there are more check cashers in America than there are Starbucks. There are more payday lenders in the state of Alabama than the entire nation combined. Client comes into Operation Hope. Hardworking young man, has 2 children, raising his family, trying to do good. He's missed a paycheck. And this is relevant for Detroit, where the average income is $24,000 to $26,000 per family. This is very relevant to you. Guy comes in, he's working hard. He's not a lazy guy. He's working hard, but he missed a paycheck because he was trying to take care of his kid who got sick. He needed $300, and unfortunately, he went to a payday lender. And he was going to pay it back in 2 weeks, but 2 weeks got a little quick, so he said he went for 2 rollovers, just not 20, it wasn't an epidemic. He just said, let me just extend this 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, I'll pay it back completely. In 6 weeks, it was $1,300. Effective interest rate of 651%. You will never pay that. My middle name is Hope, okay? You will never pay that back. They don't want you to pay it back. It's negative behavioral economics. It's a way to kill a city's energy. Let's now talk about what real poverty is, and I'm going to talk about what real wealth is and what you need in Detroit to turn the whole thing around. You with me so far? Poverty has nothing to do with money. Whatever you've been told about poverty as relates to money is a lie. The government must use poverty as an economic metric in order to measure it so they can target it, so they can put federal mandates and policy around it. But to suggest that people are statistics is to suggest that your child is not important to you. This is real poverty. Half of poverty is low self-esteem and lack of confidence in yourself. Imagine doing your job without confidence. Imagine getting on the freeway and coming here without confidence, walking in, picking up the phone at your office without confidence. Imagine doing anything in your day without confidence. You are dead on arrival. Imagine running a business without confidence. Yes or no? Half of all wealth and poverty in America, in the world, is confidence and low self-esteem. We don't have time for this conversation, but if you want to understand black poverty, which is the same but different from all other forms of poverty, understand 250 years of slavery, followed by 100 years of Jim Crow that ended in 1970, not 1870, 1970, meaning in your and my lifetime, which means you were told for 350 years you don't matter, which means your self-esteem is in the toilet, which means that 70% of black Americans are probably clinically undiagnosed depressed. We don't have time for this conversation. I'm just trying to give you the Reader's Digest version. Low self-esteem and low confidence. And that, by the way, you could be brilliant, you could be amazing, but that factor of self-esteem will deviate and determine every function of your life. Then you've got role models. Why am I a businessman? My daddy was. Why do I wear a suit? My daddy told me to. Why do I love myself? My mother told me she loved me every day of my life. I'm not a rocket scientist. I am role modeling. So if all you see in neighborhoods growing up as symbols of success are rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers, everybody's aspirational now. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, ooh, let me be stupid. Ooh, I can't wait to be a prostitute. Oh, let me grow up to be a drug dealer. If all you see in your neighborhood as symbols of success are rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers, then why is anybody surprised that kids grow up wanting to be a rap star, an athlete, or a drug dealer? And here's the brilliant part. The book, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell proved that at 5% of role models, every community stabilizes. University of Illinois study. Check it out for yourself. Not 80% of role models, not 50% of role models, not 20, just 5. So why am I a businessman? Because my daddy told me to. Because a banker came in my classroom when I was 9 years old and taught a course in financial literacy. He happened to be Caucasian, but as far as I was concerned, he wasn't white, he was green. I was 9 years old, the banker teaches financial literacy, and I said to him, sir, what do you do for a living, and how'd you get rich legally? He said, I'm a banker and I finance entrepreneurs. As God is my witness, I said, I don't know what an entrepreneur is, but if you're gonna finance him, I'm gonna be one. The next year I started my own business. It was a neighborhood candy house. Again, we don't have time for the detailed story, but the liquor store was in the candy business. I thought he was selling the wrong kind of candy. I had high confidence now. I had a vision for myself. I went to go work for him because he wouldn't listen to me, and he couldn't shut me up, as you can't either. And I worked there for 3 weeks as a box boy, intentionally working in the back so I could see where inventories were coming from, where wholesale and retail was, what the profit margin was, what was selling, what wasn't. I quit in 3 weeks, R&D. Went home, borrowed $40 from my mother because she wouldn't give it to me because she said life is tough. You got to pay things back. $40 loan from my mother. My mother went to Ira's Food Store and Smart and Final. And by the way, I serve on the board of a company today that owns Smart and Final, which is really ironic. And we got $40 worth of inventory, came home. Short version is I made $300 a week. Put the liquor store out of the candy business when I was 10 years old. Then I found girls and lost the business. That's a whole other story. But that changed my life. That little story created this guy standing here who's directed $2.5 billion in capital in underserved neighborhoods, who has 2 million clients, 26,000 volunteers, 300 employees, and is creating a model, hopefully, that will transform these neighborhoods. But that started when I was 9 and 10. Role modeling. Watch how you live your life. It may be the only Bible anybody else reads. Environment. Again, we don't have time for this, but let me make it quick. If environment basically means if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. Now that was really good. I'm gonna just give you like clap lines and laugh lines. I mean, you need like one of these little things, applause on the side. Aspiration is a code word for hope. The most dangerous person in the world is a person with no hope. Now, I'm getting now to the Chicago solution, and the Detroit solution, and the LA solution, and the Atlanta solution. But again, Detroit is the most important city aspirationally in the country right now. You got to get it right here, and you can. Opportunity. So let me break this down. If you have low self-esteem and low confidence, crappy role models in a crappy environment, which means your hope is in the toilet, you don't see opportunity anywhere, you see the glasses half empty, not half full. You never leave your block. You never leave your house. You're depressed. You don't give up. You see everything as negative. You see the world against you, and you're a victim. Did you get that? Yeah. You flip it. Now, you're in my experience now. This has nothing to do with race. Everybody in here has this experience. You have somewhere got high self-esteem and high confidence. You may not have high self-esteem, but you got high confidence, and you can fake self-esteem. And then you got good role models and a good environment, which then leads to a level of aspiration and hope. You feel that you can do things, which means you see opportunity everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, you're cross street from Canada, for God's sakes. The question is not whether Detroit's coming back, but for whom, when, and where. Of course it's coming back, and they aren't growing any more land. So this Detroit thing of $1,000 for a house is a boondoggle. I mean, it's unbelievable, which is why you've got really the tale of two cities going on here. You've got this sort of redevelopment piece going on downtown and sort of this young, a mainstream energy coming in and making investments. And then you got this sort of other world that, by the way, you can't live without and you can't live with. So here is the drop the mic moment, and I'm done. This is really about energy. America has a history of free enterprise. And right now, we have more small business deaths, this is US Census numbers, than small business births. Now, you may not think that's important. That's the whole ballgame. Because every big business was once a small one. I'm gonna give you a little window to my next book, but here's how it will open. All wealth in the world, all wealth, with the exception of wealth that comes from crime, government contracting, and war. All wealth, other than that, comes from poor people. All wealth, because Walmart was Sam Walton with a pickup truck and a storefront. UPS was Jim Casey with $100 and a bicycle. Go back to the auto manufacturers 2 generations before, and there was some immigrant coming over from wherever, Italy or Poland or someplace, looking for a place and an opportunity better. Goldman Sachs was a guy named Goldman and a guy named Sachs. I'm not kidding, with a briefcase going door to door. Bank of America was Bank of Italy, which was making $200 loans in San Francisco, was a little Italian merchant who literally banked on a bar top. That's where banker comes from, banking on a bar top. Capital comes from the Latin root word capitas, meaning knowledge in the head. It has nothing to do with money. I'm going quick, I'm just trying to cover a lot of ground. You need energy in Detroit. You need block by block, city block by city block, energy in Detroit. You need kids trying to start a business. I don't care if they do start a business. You need them to try to start a business because it creates an immunity to failure. And success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And you cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. We're doing these Hope Business in the Box academies in inner city schools. You're gonna hear about this a little bit in the Q&A. And we do a course in financial literacy, language of money, course in dignity, which is sort of wealth, a course in entrepreneurship, 25 business you can start for $5 or less, course in entrepreneurship, pitch event, auditorium twice a year. Kid gets 2 minutes to pitch their ideas in front of judges, no celebrities. Go, pitch your idea. If they win, we fund them up to $500. Think Shark Tank for kids. Do you know what it does with kids' self-esteem? To have their ideas featured on a stage like that? Quincy Jones says it takes 20 years to change a culture. In the last 20 years in this nation, we've made dumb sexy. We've dumbed down and celebrated it. And now we got to make smart sexy again. We're going to go into schools and do internships, not with the A+ kids, because those kids will be fine. I'm obsessed with kids who have D, C's, and F's. By the way, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. got a C- in public speaking from Crozier Seminary. I got a C- in math. It wasn't I wasn't interested in education. It wasn't speaking to me. Education and aspiration were not connecting. Nobody wants a mortgage. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, ooh, give me a subprime 20% interest mortgage. They want to become a homeowner. Nobody wants a car loan. They want a cool car. Kids don't want to lecture about education. They want to know what can you do for them with that education. So if you had 5% of people in here decided to bring an intern into your office, if a kid pledges to get a B- in any year of high school, and they got a D, C, or an F, and they pledge to get a B-, by the way, that is Steve Jobs. That guy the guy or girl with a D, C, or F, that is the Steve Jobs model. That kid gets a B-, you give them a $500 stipend. $500 stipend. It pays for a business suit, business cards, transportation money, and food money for 6 weeks. It's a hand up, not a handout. In 6 weeks, this will happen. The kid will change your business, and the business will change the kid. And now the kid has a relationship with somebody in the free enterprise system. He knows somebody with a business card. He knows somebody who has a salary. He knows somebody who goes to work every day and who aspires and has high. He knows somebody who looks like that. And when you do that block by block, 5% at least or better, you will literally transform Detroit within 5 years because it's all about energy. All this is energy. And I'll end where I started, with a spiritual statement. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And 99.9% of all DNA is precisely the same, which means that race is stupid. Arguing about race is stupid. You are white because your descendants were raised in a cold environment in Europe, and that's how that pigmentation in your skin absorbs cold weather. Look at my friends in the Nordic countries. You got a narrow nose because it heats your ear before it goes into your lungs. You have long hair because if your ears get cold, you're toast. Black people are dark because Africa is hot. We got a wide nose because it cools the air before it goes to your lungs. I don't know why we have big lips, but everybody wants them. I want you to reimagine Detroit. I want you to see yourself as tied together, as interconnected. I want you to understand that credit scores are more than about credit scores. Credit scores is about well-being. Because when you raise your credit score, you raise your self-esteem. You raise your sense of I can do and I can be. And you drive predators out of your neighborhoods and you drive hope in. God bless you.